How's it going, everyone? This is Chris from VR Roundtable. Welcome to episode 76. I'm joined by Steve, Anthony, and Gary. Steve, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing good.
Awesome.
Nothing else to say. I'm just doing good.
Yeah, you're doing good? Perfect. How about you, Anthony?
Oh, I'm doing good. Everything's going well.
How about you, Gary?
Same here. I'll expand a little bit because I wasn't here last week, but I really enjoyed the show that you guys did anyway. So I think it was a pretty good show. But this week I'm a little bit annoyed because my wife and I, we both bought each other presents at Christmas, as generally couples do. But it turned out that we actually bought each other the same present. We both bought each other concert tickets to see a band. Now, I don't know if anybody's aware of these, Flight of the Conchords. They're a comedy band, a comedy duo. And we were supposed to be going to see them next week in Birmingham. We both bought each other the same present, which was a bit weird anyway. So we had to sell off some tickets, sold them to my friends. But then now we've just heard today, we've got an email through that one of the guys in this band, they've actually injured their hand and they've had to cancel these shows. It's just a little bit annoying because you get when you've got a family and you're trying to organize babysitters and this kind of stuff, and you get it all set up, you're all ready to go, and then something like this happens. It's never happened before, but I just wanted to mention that because I'm annoyed. I'm just using this as an outlet, really. But I don't know if anybody's heard of Flight of the Conchords, but leave a comment if you have, because they're one of my favorite comedy bands, comedy duos anyway.
Yeah, I haven't, but I have this band I like called Passion Pit, and they kept canceling their tours like year over year because like the main guy kept getting depressed. I felt so bad. He's just like, I'm too depressed to do this. But anyway, there's a crap ton of news this week, really. Like, this is a pretty jam-packed week, honestly. I bet next week will be even more with GDC. So I guess we'll just jump into it. The first thing is Skyrim VR was announced for PC VR out of the blue, and it's releasing on April 3rd. There's a Steam page up for it and everything. This is crazy news. I can pass over to Steve since you just
since I'm laughing at the crazy news. The big thing is we sort of thought Skyrim VR would come to PC VR at some point, but I don't think any of us was anticipating that it would be coming this fast. And even if we were anticipating that it would be coming this fast, I don't think we would have anticipated that it would have come with a 2-week lead time or whatever. Like the announcement was like, oh, and by the way, this is coming out in like 2 weeks. So I think that's pretty cool, honestly. Like, there's nothing bad here that you could really say. It's a good game. People are going to like it on PC VR. I stopped playing it on PlayStation VR, I think somewhere around the holidays when I was getting really into Fallout 4 VR. And now I'm kind of glad because now I can give it a go on my Rift. I really... when I was playing it on PlayStation, I sort of settled in on gamepad, and I know people that have followed us for a long time are gonna give me grief in the comments, Steve and his gamepad. But like for me, I couldn't get by with the Move controllers because I couldn't locomote and cast spells at the same time. On the Rift, that shouldn't be a problem with the thumbsticks. I can walk backwards while trying to get some distance from an enemy and continue to cast spells at them. So I really look forward to giving this a go on my Rift when it comes out in a couple weeks.
Yeah, awesome. Anthony, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge, obviously. Everybody kind of assumed it'd be a 1-year exclusivity window. So nobody was thinking it was going to come this quick. Everybody thought we'd be lucky to get it November of this year and not even have it delayed a little bit longer than that. And this isn't even a 6-month exclusivity window. I don't know if it's like a 4-month thing or what, but Steve was just saying that it's all good. It's all good for everybody unless you're a developer that is releasing a game anytime in the next basically 30 days, because you got a lot of games that are coming out this next week. You got Arc Park, you got Apex Construct on Vive and Rift is coming out next week. You got the Mage's Tale, which it's interesting. The Mage's Tale is coming to the Vive, and it's almost like maybe they're rushing it out because of the Skyrim thing. They heard about Skyrim. They're like, oh, we were going to have the Mage's Tale come to the Vive. We better get that out right now so that we can get a little bit of sales before Skyrim comes in and just destroys everything. Because when Skyrim does arrive, it's a $60 game, and people don't have unlimited budgets. So, if you're going to pay $60 for Skyrim VR, you might not buy anything until May, and so. And then especially if you happen to be another RPG style game like A Vanishing Realms or Carnage Chronicles or The Mage's Tale, the big boy has, the daddy has shown up, and so the kids don't get to play anymore. Daddy has arrived, and it's going to be awesome just to see. The thing about Skyrim that I loved is, it's the same thing as Fallout, but it's like when you're in Skyrim and you're just exploring that countryside, and the winds are whistling, and some raindrops just start gently falling, and it's just this magical. And then the rain gets a little bit stronger. A couple minutes later, it's a freaking downpour, and the music is swirling. It's a magical thing. So I'm definitely looking forward to this.
Yeah, I look forward to this probably more than Fallout 4, just because I didn't really get too into that, but. My girlfriend plays Skyrim all the time, and like I've been playing it on her PS4 like as a flat gamer, and I just can't wait to play it in VR. I'm so happy that this has happened because I can't even play it. I don't have a PSVR, so this is gonna be my first time getting into it.
I think it's obviously a big game for VR, but keep it in mind, when did Skyrim come out? 2011, something like that, right? A lot of people have already played this, and I don't know that it's going to cannibalize. Well, I guess I shouldn't say cannibalize, but I don't think it's going to necessarily slow a lot of other games down. I think a lot of VR enthusiasts will be interested to check it out, and there will be a subset of those enthusiasts that have never played Skyrim before, which I was in that camp when it came out on PlayStation. And ultimately, I think if we also consider that it is a ported game, right? And they're going to put motion controls in there. You're going to be able to shoot your arrow, swing a sword, but it's still going to have all of that gamepad isms. It's going to be press button to do this function, press button to do this function. You're not actually going through and doing everything with motion controls. Really, all you're doing is aiming with motion controls. Everything else is going to play like a gamepad game. So I would have to think the motion control only crowds will still kind of not fall in love with the gameplay of Skyrim purely on that aspect. Now, it's a very deep experience. You got all the other stuff going on that makes it a great game. I'm not knocking it, but from a motion controls perspective, for a feeling like you're there in VR perspective, this is a ported gamepad game where they let you aim with motion controls, and it's very different than something like a Lone Echo where it's a truer feeling of motion controls in it.
Yeah. I agree. It is different from Lone Echo in that way, but it's still the closest thing we've got to this kind of game being within VR, where you can experience a whole world, a whole open world in this way. So I think that alone is sort of a credit to it. And like you, Steve, actually, when I played this on PSVR, I picked up Skyrim when I got my PSVR, and I sort of gravitated more towards playing it sitting with a gamepad, weirdly. And I'm not usually somebody that would do that, especially in a game like this. It just seemed to work a little bit better, and it was a little bit more comfortable and easy with a gamepad kind of style controls. Now, when this comes over to PC, and you're right, it's because it wasn't built with motion controllers from the ground up, it's sort of almost like a half step. So you can do certain things, and you've got your hand presence in there, which makes a big difference. But there are certain things that you do in a very similar way to if you were playing it with a gamepad. But just to experience being in that world, and how I experienced Fallout 4, it's the fact that you can really sort of feel like you are living and moving around in that world as if you are actually there, rather than being seated with a gamepad. So I think when this comes over to PC, I think having the more accurate and less finicky motion controllers will mean that I'll definitely be playing this with Oculus Touch. I don't have any desire to play this on PC with gamepad, although I did sort of gravitate to that format in PSVR. Fantastic game though, either way. I can't wait for this.
Yeah. Interesting. This has gamepad support in the PC VR version, which Fallout did not. So I think I almost wonder if we're getting sort of a PSVR port. I don't know. I should caution my words there because I have no inside knowledge to know that that's the case, but I just find it interesting that Bethesda gave this gamepad support on Skyrim, but they did not with Fallout 4.
Yeah, I just hope that like the frame rates are good, the graphics are good, and the controls are good. Like since they're going to be supporting Oculus Rift, Windows MR, and Vive, I hope they actually optimize them for all those platforms. So that's the only thing on my wish list to make it something super, super good. All right, so the next news story is that Google is going to reveal or talk about a new high-res display at Display Week, which is a trade show that takes place May 22nd. They're going to have a talk there. Carlin Vieri is going to give a talk called the 18 megapixel 4.3 inch 144 ppi 120 hertz OLED display for wide field of view head mounted displays. So that's a mouthful, but that's literally what the talk is. He's going to talk about this ridiculously high resolution display. Appears to be LG being the partner of this display, or maybe they'll be making the display. But I mean, that's ridiculous. Like, I really hope that this is something that they're not just being like, this is super high out in the future. This is something that's going to happen soon. Because even if we can't run the display, you know, just upsampling the current resolution to it, I'm sure would make it look amazing. Yeah, Steve, what do you think about this random announcement thing?
Well, you know, a year ago, I'd been a lot more excited about this than I am now because I'm concerned. Well, I guess I even shouldn't say concerned, but I hope this doesn't become vaporware. I don't know if that's a term you use for hardware. I know you use it for software, but like, you know, we see an announcement like this from time to time. We hear all this stuff. Like Google apparently had a real high-res display. I'm not Google, I'm sorry, but Samsung had a high-res display, not quite as high as this, but it never really materialized. We got the Samsung Odyssey, which is higher res, but we're not getting necessarily the resolution that some of these companies are working with in their laboratories. You know, I know that Oculus has something high-res in their labs. I know HTC has high-res stuff in their labs. Any of these companies should have things that they're working on. But that doesn't mean it's going to become something commercial that we're able to get our hands on anytime soon. Now, I would love to be 100% wrong. I would hope that, you know, it would be super awesome if LG, like at the announcement or at the next week, kind of came out and said, hey, and by the way, you know, we're making something with this same display tech. It's not quite as high res, but it's still really, really high res compared to what we have on the market today. And that would be great. But I don't think that's going to happen. And I think a year from now, we're going to be sitting here with comparable res headsets, maybe even the same headsets that we already know about. And we're going to be talking about some story where somebody somewhere has a talk or a patent on a piece of technology that's awesome, but no indications that it's being commercialized and going to be available to us anytime soon.
Yeah, definitely. Gary, what do you think about this ridiculously high-res display talk?
Yeah, I agree with what Steve was saying there, because I think part of it is the fact that because we're so invested in this technology and we follow all the latest little bits of news that are coming out of this kind of stuff, you get snippets of technology that is still years away yet. So it's the same as in any other industry. This is no different. But this isn't something that they're publicizing in the sense that this will be a commercial product that's coming anytime soon. It's just something that they're showing off and are giving a talk and possibly pointing towards some of the benefits of what this kind of display technology can do. And you know, LG, I have to believe that LG are the sort of the manufacturers behind this sort of, I guess, prototype display. And they're just sort of partnered with Google, possibly to get some kind of interest within this from other manufacturers, maybe. But it's still early days. There's not really a lot more to say other than the fact that this is probably coming in a few years' time. But we have no idea at this point.
Yeah, I mean, this would make perfect sense because, you know, LG made the display in the Pixel 2 XL. They made the display in my LG phone, which is an OLED. Like, they're the only other people who can make OLEDs other than Samsung, pretty much. So that makes perfect sense. But, you know, like you guys, I agree, like the graphics card scaling isn't there yet in terms of like how much power we have to drive these, and then also the cable technology. I feel like if I didn't know those two things, I would be much more hype about this than I am today. What do you think, Anthony?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things that we know about this talk is it's only going to last like 20 minutes. So it's probably just going to be a really brief teaser kind of talk of the future of these displays that they're working on. But I mean, it's 120 hertz. I'm kind of curious about that. Like, is it going to be running natively 120 hertz? Is it going to be doubling it from like 60 hertz, kind of like what Sony does? And then it's wide field of view. So are we talking a lot more than 110 degrees? I'm kind of curious about that. LG being the partner is interesting from the standpoint that LG, we thought they were going to be a SteamVR partner, and they still could be, but they were completely quiet about their SteamVR headset. And one thing that I like, my dream scenario here is that LG, because they were working on this and they could see the promise of this, that maybe they canceled their SteamVR headset that they were going to have and decided, you know what, we could maybe have this ready by late 2019. Let's go with this instead. Let's cancel that other one. Let's focus our attention on this. So I don't know that this is like 5 years away. I think we could see this in late 2019, possibly. Obviously, you would need foveated rendering and eye tracking to make it all happen, because how are you going to drive this? And Chris, I kind of would be curious more to hear what you have to say as far as the cabling of it, because yeah, that is, I mean, but isn't there a new version of HDMI that's coming out that like supports like crazy high resolutions, like the next level version of HDMI? So maybe this could feature that, but then obviously you would need GPUs that all feature that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that just points to the fact that this has to be multiple years out for people like us, because the display technology isn't there, like the cable technology isn't there, unless we ran like 3 DisplayPort cables from our graphics cards or something like that. But yeah, definitely a few years out. Anything else anyone wants to add? Or
well, I think the 1400 PPI, I think that has value, even if we can't drive the actual resolution right now. There's definitely value there. If we could take our existing GPUs, the existing bandwidth that we have on our cabling technology, and plug one of these headsets in, or plug one of these headsets that had this display into it, not like one exists already, but and we would see benefits. Even though we can't drive it native. So it's not a situation where I'd say we should throw the baby out with the bathwater. But, still, I keep coming back to the same thing. This is not something to get excited over until we actually see a product that is announced that says, okay, Vive 2.0, it's using these displays from Google and LG that are 5500 by 300 or 5500 by 3000 in resolution. Then we should all get excited.
Oh, yeah. Wait, can I bring up one last thing about this? Like, we could all talk about this really quick. So we know that all these different companies, like, they all want to have their own stores, right? We got Steam, you got the Steam. I mean, you got Steam, you got the Oculus Store, you got PlayStation Network. So now we have Google. I mean, well, Google has Daydream, and then you got Apple. And everybody's going to want their own store. Eventually, we're going to have so many accounts. Think of all the different accounts we're going to have. But do you think Google will eventually have like maybe a high-end version of Daydream, and they'll have their own platform? And could this be maybe the first headset for a new Google platform that is going to have its own complete store and everything? Or are they going to keep putting stuff onto Steam?
Well,
anybody?
I mean, when they do have their own platform and they have Android, and I'm assuming, I don't have a Daydream headset, but I'm assuming you buy content from some sort of storefront there. So I don't know. I haven't done my homework, but I think they already sort of have their platform established. Whether they
for
make
the mobile Daydream, but I mean, like, more standalone headset, like, would that be integrated? Like, that would just be part of the Daydream. It would just be another category that they would have.
That's what I would assume, honestly. I would think they would just sell stuff to you that way. Like, I don't know what they do. Like right now, they don't. If you buy, say, music on your desktop through their service, you're not buying it through the Windows Store. So they have ways. Like you buy your YouTube Red subscription if you subscribe to that from desktop. So they have desktop services and content that they sell you that aren't inherently and only mobile. That they just sell it to you. They take your credit card straight.
I don't know. Like if they ever made a desktop head-mounted display that was, you have to plug into your computer, it has to be SteamVR because like all their stuff's already on Steam. I think they know they lost that war. They couldn't ever like really get enough users to use their store. So, but on mobile or on standalone, I think they'll probably just use Daydream. Yeah.
But as well, because what he's doing here, this hardware engineer from Google, Carlin Vieri, I think that what they're doing, they've sort of developed this kind of display in conjunction with LG, and they're just sort of showing this. I think it's still early days. This is just sort of a foresight into what's possible in this kind of stuff. And I think it's probably too early to talk about platforms for a headset like this, although it's interesting to say, what are their long-term plans for VR headsets. Of course, that's interesting. But with this particular story, I think it's more focused on these displays as being a prototype that they're trying to give some kind of attention to in order to possibly get, other companies interested in this technology so they can get into partnership with those maybe. I don't know, it's difficult to say, but I would think that if they were to go to the PC route, I think it would have to be a SteamVR kind of headset.
Yeah, well, we'll find out in May 22nd, I guess. The next news story is Valve updated SteamVR to automate super sampling. So basically it detects what graphics card you has and has this universal variable where it's like, all right, you're going to be set at like 2.0 if you have a 1080 or something like that, as an example. So I think it's kind of cool that they're automating this, but also personally, I don't really get why it can't be application specific or just like a simple, you're getting 45, let's lower the super sampling till you get 90. I don't know. I feel like they're doing it all wrong, but I want to hear what you guys have to think about it. Anthony, what do you think?
Honestly, I haven't really been paying attention that much to this one, but I don't think it'll affect me too much because I'm already on the low end. It's just going to leave me there. So I don't think it's going to super sample me too much.
Well, no, but it might affect you because it may desample you or unsample. I don't know what the correct term is, but they've stated that it'll go the other way if they detect that you're really your GPU, but I don't know if they're looking at any CPU or memory statistics and data as well, but they can take you under 1.0. So if you boot this up, I don't know if it really works with the Rift. I'm showing a screenshot of my SteamVR settings page with my Rift plugged in and my 1080 Ti, and it detected me at 106%, which is, I guess, equivalent to 1.06 with the old settings. And I don't know if that's because of the Rift and because they know that I have a Rift and they're letting Oculus handle it on that side, or if they've detected that I have Oculus Tray Tool and I have my general settings set for 1.5 super sampling in Oculus. But I found it odd with the 1080 Ti that they only had me at 106%. So I'm guessing it's seeing something. If I had a Vive plugged in, that it would go higher than 106. So Anthony, it would be interesting for you what they do with lower hardware. They may put you at 95 or they may put you at 90. But more importantly, from here is I think this is a good first step, and this is only in beta. So like a user like me, let's say I still had my Vive and I had it plugged in, and I don't know, I'll make something up, say it put me at 200%, which is owed 2.0. It would work fine for damn near every game, but if I played a game like Fallout, it would wreak havoc. And I think this is where, because it's not detecting your PC, like Chris said, in real time. It's not looking at its current stress. It's kind of doing a generic scan of your hardware upon boot, I guess, and saying, okay, well, the super sampling should be set here. And then they're acting like every game behind it can support that. And we know that's not the case with Fallout. So it can be problematic, but I think what they're going for, and there's been a lot of commentary on the Vive subreddit and such, like with the Vive Pro coming out, people are saying, I don't have the GPU to handle it. I don't have the GPU to handle it. I think Steam and Valve are looking at a way to almost make this console-esque, where they don't necessarily want people in there fooling with the super sampling settings. Like, you know, for the power users that know what they're doing, sure, that's great. But for everybody, you know, they're trying to make it a little more like an appliance out of the box, where people don't have to tinker. And this is a way to automate that. But I think they have a ways to go if it isn't going to be application specific, or if they can't change these settings on the fly in real time, because you can't have you know, grandma who doesn't know much about PCs trying to get their grandson to play a game, and then all of a sudden one game works good and another game works like trash because, you know, Steam set a 2.0 multiplier when they shouldn't have.
Yeah. You're right, because this is designed to make things easier so that people can get the maximum benefit. So somebody out there who has a 1080 Ti but doesn't want to go in and mess around with any super sampling settings by using advanced settings or anything like that, then it will automatically detect that they have this high GPU, and then it will give them a sharper image. They don't need to worry about it. And again, I think what you were saying about the Vive Pro, Steve, and also the Pimax, I think they're doing this not just for the Vive Pro, but also all these other headsets that are going to start to materialize over the next few months, where they have different resolutions, screen resolutions, native resolutions. And a lot of people don't want to worry about tinkering and doing all this kind of stuff. So it will just be a catch-all solution, so that people should be getting the best experience for their particular headset. I don't know, because like you, Steve, I went into this and sort of tried it, and I was getting sort of a 1.2 when I went into advanced settings. It was automatically going down to either 1.1 or 1.2, and depending on, you know, I tried it a few times, and for, you know, I wasn't getting any reprojection or anything like that. I'm running a 1080 Ti. I went into Job Simulator, and, you know, no reprojection, no drop frames, nothing of this. I put it up manually to 2.0, still wasn't getting any reprojection, no drop frames. But like you, I wonder if it's taken into account, because I am using an Oculus Rift, if it's using this 1.5 that I'm using in Oculus Tray Tool. Is there some kind of, because I didn't notice a drastic decrease in resolution or anything like that when it was doing that. So I wonder if it's taking that into account, like you say.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed, but you can't, using an Oculus Rift, you cannot look at reprojected frames or drop frames in OpenVR advanced settings or in any of the statistics, because what's going to happen is asynchronous space warp is going to kick in, and you're never going to see the drop frames, even if you're going into reprojection. That's because the Oculus software is handling your reprojection, as opposed to the OpenVR software. And that's another reason why we want to keep in. We want to keep the reprojection settings disabled. If you have a Rift, you want asynchronous space warp to do the work. So those statistics are unreliable if you have a Rift. So I wouldn't trust that. But you know, you're a VR veteran. You probably know what reprojection looks like and could tell if you were experiencing it. So
you could. I mean, I guess you could experiment with that by disabling ASW in Oculus Tray Tools, and I didn't know that actually, Steve. So I'll check that out.
Yeah, I learned that fooling with Fallout 4 VR, because I was trying to ratchet everything up till I started getting reprojection, statistical reprojection, whether or not I could detect it, and I kept, no matter what I did, you know, Steam kept telling me, you know, no drop frames, and I'm like, that's bullshit, because I'm seeing drop frames. So
yeah. All right, next story is Variety reports that sources suggest Oculus Go will launch at Facebook F8 on May 1st. And I kind of read over this article. I don't really think there's too much merit to it, because they're basically tying together that tweet that said, you know, the biggest AR VR news from Facebook to date is going to happen at Facebook F8 to the Oculus Go. And I don't really know how credible all this is, but anyone have anything to say about this?
The article says that it's using multiple sources familiar with the company's plans. You know, if they are just using that tweet that came out to say that, you know, the biggest VR news to come out from Facebook will be at F8, it seems a little bit strange, because this wouldn't be the biggest news. It simply wouldn't be. So it's a little bit odd that they would use that. But if they do have other sources that are close to the company and they know the plans, then this could turn out to be true. Now, my issue is, a lot of the articles that are written about this are sort of saying it can't be the fact that it's F8, because this wouldn't be the biggest news that Oculus would announce at that event. My issue is that the two things don't need to be mutually exclusive. So they could still announce a release date at this F8, whereas also announcing many other things that could be big news as well. So I don't think it rings true that you should dismiss it just for those reasons. Who knows? Again, I was reading a lot of posts on this on Reddit, and people were saying this is all speculation. All we need to do is wait a week, and we'll see where it's going. So we're recording this on Sunday. GDC begins tomorrow, so hopefully this time next week we'll have a few more answers.
Yeah. Anything else to add from anyone?
I'll just say that one advantage for them waiting till F8 to do it is just the different kind of media that would cover F8 compared to, say, like GDC. Like you have a bit more mainstream media that will cover F8 than will cover, say, GDC. So like if Zuckerberg got up on stage, if there was like a little a stool that was on stage with like some black velvet covering something, and he pulled it off and he's like, Oculus Go available, you can buy it right now, it's $199, available now. If he did that on stage with all the media that's covering F8, they might get a bit more of a mainstream awareness out there. There is an advantage to that. But a lot of things seem to be pointing to GDC, because one thing that's happened recently is both Best Buy and Amazon, like this was just in the last couple of nights, brand new pages showed up on Best Buy and on Amazon that are showing the Oculus Go. And they just kind of came out of the blue, and they both came on the same exact day, which almost seems like something is imminent. And then, of course, GDC is next week. You got all the developers there. Honestly, I expect something happening next week. We might get like, it's available on this day, pre-orders are starting now, or something like that, something like that. Because pre-orders typically kind of drum up a little bit of an excitement and hype. So a lot of people have been waiting for these Oculus Go's for a long time already. A lot of people thought it would already been out by now.
Yeah, it still says early 2018 on the Oculus website, so I don't know if that's that true anymore, but we'll see what happens with that. All right, so we're going to move on to some smaller news stories, the first of which is a game called Creed Rise of Glory is going to be coming from Survios, which is going to be a tie-in to an upcoming Creed movie, so like an Assassin's Creed type of game. Does anyone have more to say about this? I didn't really research this too much.
No, it's okay. So Creed isn't Assassin's Creed.
It's not Assassin's Creed?
No.
Oh, no.
You get a pass because
that would have been big news.
That would have been bigger news. Okay, I see what it is. Yeah,
you're a little bit younger than us, but for the other three of us, we grew up with the Rocky movies, right? In the Rocky movies, for anyone who doesn't know, like Chris.
Oh my God, I watched Rocky. I'm so excited now. I'm more excited.
Yeah, Rocky fights Apollo Creed, but then I don't know, a few years ago, Michael B. Jordan was in a movie where he's Apollo Creed's son, and they're doing a sequel now. I guess it's called Rise to Glory. But the news here is that Survios is developing a tie-in game, and I think that's news, because we'll cover this game whenever it starts to surface and we see gameplay and all that, but Survios is an established VR developer, and if they, it seems odd to me that they would be dropping, in my opinion, dropping down to do some sort of movie tie-in promo type work. Like, I think less of that type of development, and it's not universal. It's not that way every time, but in general, movie tie-in promotional content isn't as good as, say, raw data or sprint vector. So to see them doing that, I don't know what that motivation is. Maybe they just have a fantastic idea for a boxing game, and they're just using this for more marketing power. Or
I can tell you exactly what it is.
What?
So, MGM, Metro Golden Mayer, whatever their name is, the MGM studio,
yep.
They actually own a percentage of Survios. They invested into Survios. So this is just kind of like, well, we invested into your VR company. We got this movie, Creed. We want a VR thing for this. Can you hook us up? And they're like, yeah, sure, we can hook you up. That's probably what's going on here.
Well, maybe, but even then, like, hopefully they have something bigger and better in the works. Like, Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Good find.
Cool. Yeah. That's awesome because like, I have seen Rocky. I didn't know that it switched to be called Creed at some point. But I'll have to catch up on all those movies, and it's just cool for me because Survios is going to be coming to my college to recruit like developers and stuff from our school. So like, they're killing it with these VR games, and that's exciting to see, like a VR company.
Well, yeah, there was one more thing here though, because I had made a note that from what we do know of this game, it has a virtual stamina meter, and I thought that was interesting because I've seen that from time to time in a game, and in VR, like, how can you do stamina, right? Like, because your stamina is you. If you're the one sitting there throwing the punches and ducking and dodging, then your own physical fitness is your stamina. Like, how are they going to make, like, if I'm not tired, like, let's say my son's playing, he's been playing for 30 minutes and his character's wore out, and I just grabbed the headset and put it on. I'm not tired. How is it going to slow me down? I guess it would just make my punches less effective or whatever like that. But I think something like virtual stamina or virtual fitness in a game is hearkening back to old mechanics that we had to have. And I don't think that works in VR. Like, I think it's kind of crap. What do you guys think?
Well, thrill of the fight or whatever, you eventually lose some stamina in that game, I believe, and like your punches just get a little more sluggish. Now you might still have stamina yourself, but in the game they just kind of go into a slow motion mode where you're kind of wobbling, you're tired, you're breathing heavy or whatever. So I don't know that that's a make or break type of deal. What do you think, Harry?
Yeah, I'm not too sure either. It's an interesting point that you make, Steve, because I guess that's the end goal of what we want with these games. We want them to be as realistic and sort of close to life, so that everything that you're experiencing in real life is represented within the game. So when you have these artificial limitations thrust upon you within the game, it can, I guess, sort of break immersion. I guess that's the end result of it. It breaks immersion a little bit. But at the same time, they're making a game and they've got to have control over the player in some way. And I guess this is just a way of them leveraging some kind of control on the player. Not ideal, but this still feels like really early days because we've not seen any screenshots or any videos or anything like that yet. So we'll see what they come up with. And just on the point of Survios doing this, I think it's an interesting thing because they've had so much success with raw data and sprint vector that this is really like Steve says, it's a bit of a surprise that they're sort of going into this kind of stuff now, and it could be for reasons that Anthony said as well. But hopefully they can make the best out of this situation and give us a really good boxing game. I think that's all we can hope for.
Yeah,
I believe.
That'd be awesome.
I was just going to say, I believe it was mentioned that at GDC in Survios's booth, they're going to have this game Electronauts, which is like this music creation game that they're working on, and then this Creed game could be there, so we might actually get like a legitimate trailer maybe or some screenshot, because all we have is a title screen for this. There isn't a single screenshot, and we do have some quotes from some of the different people behind it, and what one of the things they were mentioning is they really want to bring the feeling of being in these big boxing arenas and kind of the spectacle of it, which actually sounds super cool because we really only have 2 boxing games in VR. We have Thrill of the Fight, and then we have Knockout League, and Knockout League, right? And then that one's kind of like a punch out, and Thrill of the Fight is kind of a really indie game. I know there's like a virtual boxing league that just came out as well, but I don't know too much about that. But there's definitely an opening for a more realistic boxing game. And it'll also be interesting to see because wasn't Rocky like his coach, right? So I wonder if he's going to give his voice in the game. If they'll have his voice at all, but he might die in the movie or something. I didn't even see the Creed movie. I don't know.
No, I've tried to watch that movie about 3 times. I just can't get through it. I don't know. I just get, but I think I fell asleep twice through it for some reason. So I've heard it's actually pretty good. So maybe I should.
I don't remember hating it. I've seen it. I like all the Rocky movies. I don't remember hating it, but I don't remember. It must not have been remarkable because I can't really remember anything that happens.
Did Rocky die though? Did Rocky die at a certain point?
I don't recall that.
So.
I remember wondering if that was going to happen, though. I remember wondering if that was going to happen in the movie, but I don't remember it happening.
Potential spoilers, maybe. We don't know. Who knows? Yeah, that'll be interesting for sure. Hopefully more on that next week. All right. And this is another GDC news story, really tiny thing, but Budget Cuts has this sneak peek of their VR locomotion. They're going to have this talk about Portal locomotion at GDC. So they upload this video that potentially they're probably going to show at the talk, which just kind of shows what the game is at now. And honestly, it looks pretty similar to what it was before. Maybe just a little more colorized with like the red and blues for me, but like comparing this to what it used to be, not too different. What do you guys think about this? Anyone have anything they want to say about this?
Well, I don't know. I need to go back into Budget Cuts. To me, this looks a little better. The fidelity seems a little better, and I don't know why. So that's good. But the actual locomotion, it still remains to be seen because they're not actually showing any locomotion here, really, other than they shoot the portal and then you get the preview and then you can kind of sort of step through it or bring it over you. So there is no actual, when you're not using the teleport, can you walk around like you would in most other games. So that aspect remains to be seen. But this is they were very intentional with what they were showing here. So far I think it looks good. They piqued my interest. So I have to say I'm now more interested to play Budget Cuts than I was, say, this time last week. So I'll be curious to see if they have some creative uses for this mechanic.
This is sort of strange to me because I'd sort of lost interest. And I think you've mentioned a couple of times, Steve, Budget Cuts probably needs to up its game or something like that. And I've said very similar things. But this trailer, it's 20 seconds long. And yet, for some reason, it really got me excited to go back in and play the demo again. For whatever reason that is. And I do think it looks similar, but it does look slightly different. As you mentioned, it's got some kind of, there's something slightly different with it, and it looks a little bit better. But yeah, I think I'm not too fussed about the actual free roam locomotion being a part of this game because I don't think it will have it. First off, I don't think that will be the case. It will be built around this, using this sort of gun that you can then... Because really, this locomotion method where they're using this teleport, it's not really been done in the same way in any other game. It's teleport, but you've also got this little window before you teleport into the location where you're going to go. So that's not really been done in that way, to the best of my knowledge. And I think they shown how that can be useful in this game because it's a stealth game. You can go around, you can sort of plan your route and use it in quite an interesting way, I think. But yeah, as I say, going back into the demo is something that I definitely want to do before this game gets released.
Yeah.
One of the things that you see in that little 20-second clip is like the portal gun. They've redesigned that. It looks different, and it looks quite a bit different. And then there's a very like red blue thing going on here. Like sometimes it's red, sometimes it's blue. I wonder if that's some type of game mechanic that's in. Like somebody mentioned Ikaruga, with the blue and the red, and like maybe there's some type of special mechanic there. And there's new potted plants on the walls. Did anybody notice that? There's some new potted plants. It does have a very refined, clean, crisp look to it. But the original Budget Cuts demo had all of that as well. But one thing Chris mentioned last week, I think it was on last week's show, Chris mentioned something about, teleport only games, it's kind of a room scale game. If you don't offer free locomotion and snap turning, it becomes more room scale. And man, that's something I've forgotten about because there are so many VR games now where you have free locomotion, smooth locomotion, and you have snap turning. And the way it works is you basically can root yourself in one spot and never move your feet a muscle.
It's how you play Fallout, isn't it? It's how you play Fallout, really. Yeah.
And you don't get that room scale. And I remember those early Vive days, like in the very early days of the Vive, like walking all around. And that was like especially with Budget Cuts because of the robots and hiding behind desks and stuff. And like that real room scale, like the room scale has free locomotion has killed room scale, I guess is what we're talking
about. I said something like that like 4 or 5 months ago. It's like room scale was such a buzzword that everyone like, oh, well, the Vive has room scale, the Rift doesn't. It has room scale, room scale, room scale. But at the same time, that was an argument. Like everyone started saying we got to have smooth, walking locomotion. At the time, I guess we called it onward style locomotion. And it's like, got to have that. And the two, while compatible, there's nothing game breaking there. One inherently makes you use your room less. I do not run into the Chaperone now or the Guardian anywhere to the degree I used to this time last year. And even, certainly the year before, where I was constantly running into it because every game forced you to move around in your space. And now they just simply don't. And I don't think that's the PlayStation effect either. I think that is people looking for ways to make the experiences, the games themselves, deeper in a way. You can, you're not bothered by this kind of duality of, okay, I'm in this space in the virtual world, but I'm in my front left corner in my real room, and I know I'm about to hit my TV, so I got to spin around and get myself, somewhere else in my actual room, which is something. Those were the sort of the mental gymnastics that I would go through when I was doing a lot of room scale stuff.
It's a shame, though, in some ways, because I was thinking about this. Do you remember that little experience, Gnomes and Goblins?
Yep.
It was a kind of a room scale game, really, because you just wander around this little area that you had available to you, and then you could sort of peek around and then move over to the other side of the room and peek around into another tree or another area and this kind of stuff. And it's a shame that games really aren't designed in that way from most of them that are coming out, because I think there's a lot to that, and it harks back to the beginning of VR, and I guess it's a little bit of nostalgia to that time where all of these titles were coming out as being room scale. You've got these other ones like Irrational Exuberance, where you go from one side to the other and knock the rocks away and all this kind of stuff. That's not to say that I don't enjoy playing Fallout the way I do, which is literally standing in the center of my room and using, just free roam locomotion. I enjoy that as well, but it's a shame that seems to have, the room scale seems to have died down a little bit.
I think
it's making me sad.
But so think of that. So you can play, if you wanted to, you could play Fallout that way, where you could teleport everywhere and then walk around in your room till you hit your Chaperone and then teleport some more. Would you want to?
No, I wouldn't. Exactly.
Not for that game.
No, not.
But you know what? I think part of it too, though, is the statistics that like Valve was collecting on the size of people's room scales. And it was like people like me that had like this big old area, like I was in the 3 percentile or whatever, there was like, I mean, we were
you were
such a tiny, yeah.
You were better than 3%. You were 1%, because I'm 3% and I'm not as big as you. Oh, wow,
yeah,
that comes off wrong.
I was...
But I remember back then when we were actually talking about rooms a lot, like, because you're like 5 by 5 or something like that, and I'm 3.5 by 3, and like I'm in the top 5% even. So the people that had a room as big as yours is very rare.
Yeah, I was in the top 1% of room scale, not like money or whatever. But yeah, no, it was such a magical time, and like I think of like a game like Brass Tactics, and like, man, if this was just room scale and I could walk around rather than doing the flick thing, like I'd love that, but it just doesn't happen anymore. So
but the flick thing works so well.
It's so good though. I know, it's too good.
I mean, I guess you do have that option to a certain extent, don't you? You can still use room scale, like we were saying, but it's just you don't when you've got these shortcuts and these ways that you don't need to. I guess you just get a little bit lazy when playing some of these other games.
But that same thing applies. Like I think of that not just in room scale, but I think about that with motion controls. Like if I'm playing Fallout, or if I'm for these deeper experiences. For an arcade experience, this doesn't really apply, but for a deeper game, do I want to have to heal myself manually? Do I want to have to interact with every console with motion controls? Because it's going to take a game and stretch it out. It's going to make it cumbersome, more of a nuance when it comes to certain types of games. So I guess my thought there is, to further the industry, if we want bigger experiences, if we want more stuff like Bethesda games, if we want the next Witcher game, which was an incredibly popular game, flat from the last few years, the next God of War, all this stuff. If we want this stuff in VR, can we require and have this strong sort of consumer mandate that every little nuance must be with motion controls and or room scale in the same vein of this conversation? And does that really better the experience? Yeah. Shield, sword, motion controls all the way. Shooting guns, motion controls all the way. But every little nuance, is it really better to have to do that stuff with motion controls?
Not until we got like haptic gloves or something, then like if you're wrapping your own bandages around and you're putting like gauze on it or whatever, if you had haptic gloves and you felt all those little sensations, yeah, that would probably be super sweet. The thing that I'm sad about is you think of a game like Unseen Diplomacy. Remember Unseen Diplomacy, where you're crawling on the ground and you're walking through this door and that door, and it's as room scale as it gets. What if we never see another game like that? That is truly sad and depressing. The only thing I can hope for though is like the whole arcade scene with like the new lighthouses. If you have 4 of them, it'll do like this, 10 meter by 10 meter or whatever it is.
Yeah.
If that starts blowing up, my hope would be is that for the rare bird like me that might have a bigger play space, maybe they'll offer like arcade modes of certain games where you can really do more room scale for the people with like a big ass room, or somebody that's going to do it in their backyard under a big canopy or something to try to have a full room scale.
Just quickly going back to Steve's point on the motion controllers, because that is interesting to me. And there's a game that we'll talk about, well, actually not this week, but we'll talk about it next week, where like Move controllers, for example, on the PSVR. And I think it's what you were talking about in terms of like the room scale where you have to do these mental gymnastics. Where am I in real life and where am I in the game? There's a level of that when using motion controllers, because certain things are not natural, especially with the PSVR Move controllers. It doesn't come naturally. You have to think about certain things that you want to do in certain games. And there's a delay between you just wanting to reach out and pick something up or do something with an object, and then having to think about, okay, what button have I got to press now? What button have I got to do? And the same goes for the touch controllers. The touch controllers do it more naturally and easier in most experiences, but they're still not perfect. And there's a level of that separates you from experiencing the world when you have to think about what your hands are doing. As Anthony says, once we get to the point of gloves where everything just becomes more natural and you don't have to think about it, you don't have to think of all of these extra controls, I think that will be the point when motion controllers really take off. They're great now, the touch controllers are great now, but there's still a level that separates you from just feeling natural within any game, really.
Yeah. All right,
that's very well said. That's exactly how I feel. Like when I have to give that extra thought, I guess that's why I'm so willing to play something gamepad, because when I'm playing a Skyrim or whatever with a gamepad, Subnautica is my latest gem, I'm not thinking about anything. I'm in that world and I don't have to think about where I am in my real room. I don't have to think about, okay, how do I, detort my hand to grab a lever? Yeah. I just press A to grab lever. Like, it's less immersive if you want to only think about your hands and forget about everything else that VR brings. Yeah, it's less immersive, but at the same time, it's more immersive because I'm not having to think about a damn thing. The only thing I'm thinking about is the game and me in the game. And I think that's just why, it's left brain, right brain. I don't think there's any right or wrong to it. But it's why I think I lend that way. And I think the mainstream consumer, and not to say that I represent them in any way because I don't, but I think there are a lot of gamers out there that will feel the same way. And I think that is in part why, VR and motion controls get a little bit of the gimmick kind of branding. Like, if you go read NeoGAF or something like that, and VR is a gimmick. And I think that is a little bit, I'm not excusing it, and I don't agree with people that call it a gimmick, but I think when it comes to, squeeze trigger on motion controller to manipulate something that doesn't actually make you more efficient in a game, I think that's a little bit where that attitude comes from, and I think it's a problem that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. All right. Good discussion. So one last little story before we get on to games is Mage's Tale is going to be coming to Vive March 27th. So that's just a cool announcement. It'll also be coming to PSVR in the future at an undisclosed date, but it's currently in development. So that's just cool. Like Anthony said earlier, it's going to be coming out probably ahead of Skyrim just because they got to bang that thing out. But
one interesting thing about it is the Steam version does not support Oculus at all. It's HTC Vive only. I think Oculus has like an exclusive on that game where if you're ever going to play that on an Oculus Rift, you got to buy it on the Oculus store. So if you go to the Steam page for the Mage's Tale, all it says is HTC Vive. There's no Oculus, nothing. And even Windows Mixed Reality, I don't think even there's not even going to support that initially. You're going to have some kind of hack to get it to work on that.
I don't know. Like, there's lots of games that won't list Rift. I think if you go to Fallout, it won't list it, but it'll still boot. Like, because they would have to intentionally put something in to block it. And so far, we've only seen that. We speculated that that's what happened. What was it with Doom on Rift, and then initially it would end up being more of a Steam beta bug, and it quickly got fixed. So it wasn't an actual block, but. I would be surprised if that's the case. Like, I would be very surprised.
That's possible, yeah.
Could it be the case that it would? I mean, it would boot up on the Rift, but it's not using the Oculus SDK in that instance. If you were to do it that way, so it would still boot up on the Rift.
It might not have the controls right either. If it's emulating Vive ones, it might be not that fun compared to the native Rift. That's kind of weird.
Yeah, that's what I would. There's games that won't have the Oculus SDK version on Steam, even though the OpenVR version does support the Rift fine. Again, Subnautica is one of them. Like, I kind of want it on the Oculus store now, so I get the Oculus SDK version because they don't make it, for whatever reasons, they don't make it available in Steam. But going back to Fallout is that way. Like, it's only the OpenVR version, and that's the only one available in Steam, but it plays okay if you're willing to do all the hacks and all that crap.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to move on to games. A game pretty much everyone played except Anthony because it didn't work is Welcome to Light Fields, which is this really amazing new thing by Google where they're showing how they make light fields and kind of showing the type of immersion you can get from light fields. Who wants to talk about this?
Yeah, I can go first on this because I was extremely impressed with this. We've heard about this light field thing for a long time, and having tried this, I sort of looked into it a little bit more, and I had a basic understanding of what light fields could do and how it worked. And there was that on PSVR, it was Joshua Bell, I think it was, which was a violin. Now, this wasn't actually using light fields, and I assumed it was because you had a little bit of positional tracking in there, but they filmed that in a very different way to the way light field capture actually works. Now, that Joshua Bell thing, because I assumed it was light fields, that really captured my attention. I thought it was great. When you go into this thing, it's static scene, so it's not video, but they don't feel anywhere close to being static as something like a 360 stereoscopic photo or anything like that, because the way they work, they capture reflections and the movement of reflections in a certain scene so that they move realistically, and you can go in and experience this in a way which makes everything just look so much more natural than in a 360 stereoscopic photo. So you can stand there in one scene in particular, like you'll be standing in a kitchen and you'll see these teapots and things like that, these metallic teapots. And as you move your head very slightly in the perimeter that you have to move, the reflections move. Now, these aren't reflections that are being rendered in the same way as a scene where you could have textures and some kind of dynamic lighting where they're reflecting on it and doing it in real time. These are reflections that have been captured by a light field camera that is captured them in various positions. So these reflections are actually very, very accurate. It gives a scene that just feels far less static than something like photogrammetry or 360 photos. It makes you feel like you're far more within this place. This is just a place that is you don't feel like it's paused in time. You feel like you're standing in a room and time is still going on around you. Now, to me, I mean, this is just absolutely incredible, because not for, again, I say this all the time, but not for where it is now, but where it will be. When you have bigger areas that you can move around, and all they need to really do in order to do this is to have a bigger array of cameras. So the way this is captured, these scenes, you have like an arc of these GoPros, which then rotates on a spindle, and it captures these areas. Now that the arc of these GoPros is quite small, so you get around, I believe it's around 2 feet that you can move forwards, backwards, up and down. Now, if they had a bigger array of cameras, you'd have a wider area that you could walk around in, and it would make the experience even better. But I can't see a future where this is not the future of photography in general, to be honest. It has to be. This is just the point of photography. It's the best as I understand it, and I'm not really into photography at all, but the point of it is to capture reality in a certain point in time. This does it in the best possible way I can even imagine. There's got to be some kind of thing where, like, in the future, you'd have an event like an events photographer, a wedding photographer, or something like that, where this is just part of their standard package. In 10 years' time, this has to be part of their standard package, because this will be incredible, where you've got a high resolution headsets and you can just stand there and experience actually being at that particular moment in time in the way this is done. So this is not the same as photogrammetry. It's better than photogrammetry in some ways in visual fidelity, but photogrammetry has more flexibility to it. So you've got wider areas you can move around. But
hey, Gary,
yeah.
Imagine like a wedding. Okay, it's like, now kiss the bride. Wait, hold on a second. We got to bring in our Lightro camera. That is gigantic array of 500 cameras. Okay, now kiss the bride, and we'll have it from 20 billion angles.
Yeah, I honestly, I think people would still do that. But when the technology progresses to the point where you don't need to have I mean, it's still early days for this as well, but absolutely unbelievable. And there's a YouTube video which sort of explains light fields. I think it's Light Fields 101 by somebody who's a company who is sort of into this kind of stuff. And it really explains it well, how they work. And when you go into these scenes, you can appreciate it. Once you understand how it works, you can appreciate the potential of this kind of stuff. But I've spoken for long enough.
You spoke well, though, because I mean, you hit it all right on its head. My son was watching me go through this, and he's like, "This is it. This is boring. I'm bored. Like, go shoot something, you know? Like, he's like, what do you do? I don't get it." And I was trying to explain to him that this wasn't a game. This wasn't, you know, something rendered. This is real pictures from a real place in real life. And he's too young. He doesn't get it. But did you do the one? Well, you did, because I'm showing your gameplay, Gary. So I know you did it because I just saw it come up. But the one in the trailer where they positioned the camera, their rig, they positioned it in front of a mirror. So then as you move around, you actually see how the array of GoPros kind of bent with it, and you can look at the reflections in the little trailer building and see this is really cool. Like, this is not something I'm not going to go back in and do it again. Like it's not very exciting. Like, the content. It's what's exciting is getting a glimpse at the technology and getting a glimpse at the future. That's the exciting part. Another cool or maybe bad point is that we had I didn't count them, but let's say 25 images or 25 scenes to look at. This clocked in at over 6 gigs. Like you know, just one little vantage point, you know, is probably, you know, hundreds of megabytes per vantage point. To actually have video this way, you know, if we had 25 scenes, that's not even 1 full second of 30 frames per second video. So you would be clocking in at 10 gig a second or something crazy like that with data. Like, we're nowhere near there in terms of data infrastructure. But still, it's cool to think about of where this would go. And this is worth it. It's free. Everybody should check it out. There's no reason not to, unless you there's no reason not to, because they have a version now that if you even have an older CPU, you can do.
I tried it, didn't work for me. The No AX V2, I did that beta version and went into it. I tried it like 6 different times, restarted my PC and all kinds of things. And it was
are you still on the open input emulator version of the SteamVR beta? Because that is incompatible. I couldn't get it to work initially either. You have to be on the non-beta branch of SteamVR for it to work.
Oh my God!
Weird.
Maybe I can still try this.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I probably was on that.
So when you tried it, was it all warpy and you couldn't select anything?
When I tried it, it just said your CPU is not up to par, basically. But it was saying your CPU does not meet minimum spec, but so the experience might not be quite what it should be. And then it had this little main menu thing, but I never saw, like, my controllers never appeared, and I hit every possible button. I could never get anything started. And it was, I saw these 2 white circles that were going around me, and then I saw a white circle on the bottom, but it was just black everywhere.
So I had the same effect, and it was I didn't have the message, I guess, because I have a newer CPU, but I had the same problem. Like, I couldn't select anything. I never had any hand representation or any pointers. It's really just a pointer that you get, and I had to dig into it, and was on the Steam discussion forums, and someone from Google, a developer for Google, responded there and said, "Oh, you can't be on any of the betas of SteamVR. You need to be on the latest branch." And as soon as I did that, it started working.
Okay, I might be able to try that later today. Awesome.
Oh man, this was like ridiculously immersive for me. Like, I haven't felt like the graphics this good ever, period. Like, it just feels like you're in real life, you're in real places. Like, it's truly magical. Like, if we had high res headsets, like, this just feels like the best possible rendering of something, because it's literally the real world captured. So, like, I don't know, I was super blown away by this, and I like went through the whole tour thing, and I thought it was like really, really cool. Like, this is something I want to show to a lot of people, even if they don't appreciate it as much as I do. But just like knowing where we've come from, you know, with just 360 photos and all this stuff, and not really having depth, to feeling like I'm there, like it's really amazing. So I think Google's doing great work with light fields. It's good to finally be able to try out light field stuff. It really is that amazing. So I'd download like 100 gigs if it was meant I'd get a video of this. I don't know.
There was that video that was filmed in Lightfields, the Hallelujah video. I don't know if you remember that, but it wasn't. They didn't release the version because it was a video of a performance of the song Hallelujah, but they didn't release the Lightfield version. It was just a static, like, 360 video, really. But because I mean, I think you mentioned this, Chris, when I spoke about it last time, because I was really excited to go in and see these light fields. But I think you said, you know, it'd just be so many gigabytes of information. I mean, what do we do? But the other side of this is the fact that when they get the standards, the codecs all sorted, this kind of video will be very, very, you'll be able to compress it quite a lot, because there's not too much that changes from scene to scene and this kind of stuff. So, you know, we'll get there one day. It's incredible either way.
Yeah. 5G, Gary.
Yeah.
5G is gonna save everything.
AI. We'll just put AI in it. It's fixed.
It'll be in the cloud, and
the cloud, yeah,
we'll report
the mixed reality cloud.
Yeah, it'll be in there, and then your headset will report that, oh, he's at this angle, he's looking up, and then that's the video stream. It'll pull down in real time with zero latency.
Perfect. Sounds amazing. But man, this is a must try, I think. Like, I don't know if you guys agree, but like, if you have any VR headset, you got to try this.
It still had the video, like, or the actual crispness of the image still kind of had that 360 video, 360 image look. And I got to thinking, because it's not a resolution issue, it's not a data issue, because again, this thing was 6 gigs. I wonder if it's sort of like an IPD issue, like, you know, the left-right stereoscopy, they can't you know, whether it's an image or a video, they can't get it represented for everyone's individual IPD.
Man, it could be, because I have the exact IPD that is like the standard human IPD. So like, I never experience any problems with any.
You're the prototype.
Video. Yeah.
To go along with his normal nose last week.
Yeah. Perfect.
You know, one thing I heard about IPD, you know how we were all like, we've always talked about scale. Like, we'll get into different VR games, and it's like the toilet is like 50% bigger than it should be, you know, or the sink or whatever. There's this giant broom. I don't get it. I was reading where a developer like went really in depth on that, and he was basically saying what it is your IPDs are not dialed in. That's what it is.
I think I probably read the same thing, and this goes back to when we were talking about the impatient, because I felt the scale of that was wrong. Not in everything actually, but in certain things in that. And I read a post where a developer did go into quite in depth about talking about this IPD thing. But I did try that. I mean, the impatient, I did try it from a very small IPD all the way up to a very large IPD, and it didn't make any difference for me in that. But I can't.
Maybe it's just got to be the exact IPD, not necessarily smaller or big.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with the fact that there seems to be some grounding in this opinion anyway. So it's got to be true. It's just it's interesting though, because what happens?
So I think we're going to have a future where you're going to have your IPD professionally measured, and you're not going to buy your headset at a store. Your headset's going to be shipped to you, and it's going to be custom for your face.
Maybe
to make everything perfect.
Well, my IPD is professionally measured, and I know what it is, and I think so. So in a game where the world is rendered, or in any experience, because it doesn't have to be a game, but in any situation where the world is rendered, I don't know that OpenVR is doing this or that the Oculus SDK is doing this, but they can read where your IPD is set on the headset. Just like when you move the thing, you see the graphics come up telling you what the IPD is currently set at. If they know that information, they could draw things in the rendered world relative to that input data. However, when it comes to taking a picture of real life, they can't draw that parallax any different. What they captured is what they captured, and it's just a theory I have, but I think that is one of the things that leads to why video just looks video and still images in VR just still has a little bit of that different look to it. I couldn't put my pulse on it any other way. You guys know what I'm talking about? Even when it's high res, it just looks a little different for some reason.
I know what you're saying in 360 video and 360 photos. I do get exactly what you're saying there. But in this particular one, did you have was it the same in this? Because the resolution was low in this kind of stuff, but that's not really to do with IPD or anything. I didn't get the uncomfortable feeling that I get in some 360 stereoscopic videos.
No, it's nothing like remember that Venice one that we talked about a month or so ago, like the tour of Italy or Venice or whatever. Like that one was really bad. So no, it was nowhere near on that level, but it still it has a look to it that only still images and 360 videos that I view in VR has. Very few things have been like that didn't have that look. And it doesn't make any sense as to why, and I can only theorize that there is no one size fits all stereoscopic viewpoint. That's why binoculars have that up and down where you can kind of dial it in. Like whatever they did fixed on their rig is the separation that you get. You can't really fake that in post, as far as I know.
Yeah, I mean, in this particular one, because they don't really have any stereoscopic separation on the GoPros, it's one array of cameras which sort of rotate. So I would imagine that they're just using two different points on this rotation in order to do the stereoscopic. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess because I do know what you're saying, Steve, and you can sort of really get this feeling in 360 photos where if you tilt your head even slightly, even very slightly, you can get that sensation, even if when your head is straight, it looks fine. But there are some that even when your head is straight, it has this sort of sensation, I guess.
Yeah.
The thing I was reading, they were also talking about how your facial structure, like everybody's facial, like you have your IPD, but then you have your facial structure. Some people have deep set eyes or, all these different things. And so I really do believe 20 years from now, you'll go somewhere and zzz, it'll scan your freaking face and you'll have your headset will be custom fitted, like golf clubs are custom fitted.
I'd be down with that.
That'd be cool. I'd be with it as long as it doesn't cost way more. Yeah.
You just won't no one will be able to use your headset though. That's the problem. Everybody will have their own private headsets.
Yeah, buy your own, everyone. All right. The next game is Eternity Warriors VR. I'll pass that over to Steve if you want to talk about that.
Let me get it switched up here. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we all played this through. We did not get a code for it, so it was kind of a rare occasion where we've all played a game that we didn't get a code for. But this was on Oculus's free weekend. This weekend we're recording on Sunday the 18th, and this Eternity Warriors is it's a wave shooter. Really, it's nothing else to describe it other than it being a wave shooter. It's very, very arcadey, and they don't hide behind that fact. When you boot the game up, arcade is an option, and you can choose between different weapon configurations. I chose the 2-gun configuration. You get a shotgun in your left hand and sort of a pistol in your right hand, and you can hold the button down and sort of charge up a different type of special ammo, a different kind of shot selection. But ultimately, at its core, it is a wave shooter, and it looks pretty good. Like the worlds they've created has some detail in it. Not just the enemies, but the environments that you're in. It's sort of a gothic, hellish type world, I guess, a little bit industrial as well. So that part is good. But I come down to the fact that it was just wave after wave, and some of the character animations were repetitive, and there was a couple occasions where the directional sound wasn't right. Like I would hear something that sounded like it was behind me, but really the enemy was just kind of vaguely to the left, but it sounded like it was completely to the left. That kind of actually caused me to take damage. Like that was actually a gameplay affecting, I guess, bug or lack of balance. So it was free this weekend again. I think the game you could have bought it this weekend for $4.55 here in the U.S. I don't know what its normal price is. Maybe someone can jump in. Normally we make notes here, and we didn't this week.
Its normal price, I believe, is $15, and on Steam, I believe it's $7.50, and Oculus, it's $5.50 right now.
Okay. Yeah. So like it wasn't bad, but we talked about Guns and Stories last week. I think that's a better wave shooter. I think Dick Wild's a better wave shooter. Like if you want a wave shooter, I think there are better ones than this one. So for me, honestly, this one would be a pass.
Yeah. Anyone else have anything to add about it?
Go ahead, Anthony. You go first.
I was just going to say, I mean, yeah, everything Steve's saying is pretty much on the money. The Guns and Stories way better. See, the thing is, you're basically just standing in one spot and you're shooting enemies, right? And so somebody might say, well, Brookhaven Experiment, you stand in one spot, you're shooting enemies. Guns and Stories, you stand in one spot, you're shooting enemies. So what makes those games better than Eternity Warriors VR? And my answer to that is, well, first of all, in Brookhaven Experiment, in Brookhaven Experiment, you're standing in one spot, but if you look around 360 degrees, there's like 8 or 9 different openings that the bad guys can come from. And so you have to constantly be watching your 6. You're always like looking around. Now, so far in Eternity Warriors VR, when I played it, everything kind of came from the front 180. Like, I don't think anything came from behind me in the time I played it. And so that kind of takes a little bit of away from it there. If you never have to worry about anything coming from behind you, that's kind of a downer. But I don't think Guns and Stories had anything coming from behind you. And the difference between Guns and Stories and Eternity Warriors VR is like, you can have a wave shooter where enemies are coming at you, you're shooting your enemies, but you need to have it in such a way where there's some type of finesse to the gameplay. And the thing that bothered me with Eternity Warriors a little bit is I didn't feel like there was any finesse to the gameplay where I was getting better, or where like there were power-ups that I was shooting and then I now had this power-up or something. Maybe I didn't get far enough into the game to see that, but it just was like additional enemies. It's like, okay, to increase the difficulty, just more and more enemies. But see, Brookhaven doesn't just add more and more enemies. Brookhaven does it in a way, like it does it in an effective way, and it's the finesse of the gameplay. And this was like Action Jackson. It's just an Action Jackson kind of a game, and it does have a little bit of a horror element too. Like if I had like a 7-year-old kid, I would not put them into this. They will not be sleeping very good tonight, because the one thing I will say for this game is like these demon type creatures get way up in your face. They're 7 feet tall. They look pretty good. I was startled a couple of times, like oh shit.
Yeah, so I played through this on arcade mode as well, and I actually selected, because there's a few different weapons that you can choose, so I selected the sword and the shield to go through this. And when you play it through it with that, it actually feels a little bit, the combat feels a little bit like Primordium to me. It feels very much like a static Primordium, because you don't move around these levels. Like you say, it's a wave shooter and you're just stuck in one place, and the enemies come up to you. The enemies are, I mean, the game looks good. It looks really good. But yeah, in terms of gameplay, this just really isn't for me. I played through it with the sword, and that was okay. Not a lot really more than anything else that I can compare it to. Then I tried the bow and arrow weapon as well. It feels good, and actually I think if I was to play through it again, I'd probably use the bow and arrow. I think that felt the best out of all three that I tried. And then you've got these guns, so there's a few different ways to play it, and you can play through it multiple times. It's just really not my kind of game. I have no inclination to go back into it, but it looks good, and if you want sort of a pick up and play very quick wave hacking slash shooter, then I think this is the one to go for. But yeah.
All right, and then I'll pass over to Anthony. You can talk about Virtual Reality Football Club.
Yeah, so we haven't really had a legitimate soccer game in VR up to this point. We've had some like goalie things, we've had some goalie simulators. I think there may have been some games where you just kind of would take a shot on goal. Maybe you even had to like take your Vive wand and duct tape it to your shoe or something like that. And I mean, there have been some little games like that, but we've never had a game that tried to actually make a legitimate soccer game. And so this is Cherry Pop Games. These are the guys that made Sports Bar VR, which is a highly regarded game. A lot of people love this game. And so when this game came out, I was interested in it. We were provided a code for that, so have to state that as well. But basically, in playing this game, I mean, to cut to the chase, the real issue with this game is the controls. And the control, when we're talking learning curve, this is a learning curve. You're simply not going to fire this game up and a half hour later you're going to be doing everything that you want to do on the pitch. It's just not going to work like that. You're going to have to spend time. You're going to have to invest time learning in these controls. Now, what I will say is I've played a few online matches with some PlayStation VR players who they got this game on March 6th, so they had it like a week early. And I was playing with some guys that were running all over the field, scoring goals, passing the ball. They seemed to be doing everything that they wanted to do. So I do believe that if you can get to the other side, if you can get to the point where you have these controls to the point where it's muscle memory, you can probably play this game and have an incredible time. And then the other thing too is there is tutorial stuff in this game where you can do different tutorial things, and that can be fun as well. So you can have a little bit of fun with the tutorial. The downside is there's no single player, so you don't have computer controlled players. So if you want to get on the pitch and actually play with other people, it's a multiplayer thing. They do pull PSVR, Oculus Rift, and HTC Vive players into the same pool, but there's a lot of times where I went into it and I'm waiting for other people to join my game and nobody joined the game. So again, you're back to this reality of multiplayer games in VR where if tons of people don't jump into it, it can be, your enjoyment of the game can be affected that way. I'm still trying to play this. I still like this. What it really boils down to is like the ball is over there, you're here. If you want to run straight, it's easy to run straight, but how do you run over there? That is the key problem with this game control wise. And it's like Sprint Vector. What Sprint Vector does, you run like this, and then if the track is turning that way, you run like this, and then you turn and you go like that. But I don't know why Virtual Reality Football Club, it doesn't work like that. Gary, I know you've played it, so
yeah. I've only played very briefly, so I didn't put it down on my list this week, but I did sort of go through the training, that kind of stuff, and actually it was better than I expected it to be, but the controls are the main thing. But at the same time, and I mentioned this to you, I can't think of a way that they can really do what they're trying to do better. It's a very difficult thing that they're trying to do. So you're controlling certain aspects of your movement with your arms, but you're also controlling your feet with your arms independently of that. And it's difficult to sort of get over that. So yeah, I thought it was okay initially. I can't really judge it because I need to spend a lot more time with it. When I went in there and went through the training, I felt like an uncoordinated mess, if I'm being honest. Very much how I feel like when I play football in real life. So maybe this is just an accurate simulator. I don't know, but yeah. So it was better than I expected it to be. Let me put it that way. But you need to put a lot of time into getting used to the controls on this, I think.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? Anyone?
Oh, well, one other thing I'll just mention is like one of the things about this, I'm pretty sure it was Virtual Reality Football Club. I'm starting to get this mixed up because there's a lot of games now where I seem to go into these games, right? And you're faced in this direction, everything's fine. You turn over like this and you have those arrows, you know, the arrows telling you turn your ass around, bro. And I'm pretty sure Virtual Reality Football Club has these arrows. And so whenever I see arrows in a game like that, I think, okay, let me go into the menu and let me activate room scale mode. And then maybe no arrows, right? And so, but I couldn't find that. I couldn't find an option for that in this game. But what I was thinking was, if you had a wireless headset, because eventually you tangle in your cord, but if you had a wireless headset and it didn't have those arrows around, and so the ball is over there, I just turn towards the ball and run to the ball. Problem solved, right? But if you don't have wireless, the problem with that is you're eventually going to be in a tangled up mess, you know. So
yeah. Any other games anyone wants to talk about this week?
I don't have anything else.
All right. So that was episode 76 of VR Roundtable. Be sure to leave a like on this episode if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. We do a podcast every week. And if you're listening on iTunes, be sure to leave a review. It helps out a lot. I know it's a little bit of a pain to do, but it certainly does help the channel out a lot and help us out. So I guess with that being said, that's been episode 76, and we'll see you all next week for some GDC talk. Bye.
Bye.
Later.